Welcome to Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 310. What to do in IT. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss the ins and outs of running your computer repair business. Our show today is brought to you by Instant House Call, remote support that is easy for you and your customers to use. This is a must-have tool with features like on-demand for your break-fix customers and unattended for managed services. You can do automatic repairs with the auto repair built-in software, and it will save you time and money when you're supporting your customers. Check it out for a free trial at instanthousecall.com. And also buy FreshBooks, the simple pain-free invoicing solution for freelancers and small business owners. For a 30-day free trial, just go to freshbooks.com/podnuts. Enter podnuts in the How Did You Hear About It section. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have John Dubinsky from the Maven Group. John, how you doing?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, Jeff.
Won't you be mine? Won't you be mine?
Won't you be my neighbor? So it's going to be 30 minutes of you and I singing our favorite show tunes.
Right.
Paco, jump in anytime you're ready.
Who's that, Bob Barker?
Bob Barker. And also that lovely voice was from the great Paco Lebron from ProdigyTeks. Paco, how are you doing?
Better than good, better than most. How is everyone doing today?
I'm doing excellent. All right. We're going to start off the show with some tips, stories, or tricks, or something in between. And John, since you like to go first and you get mad when I don't let you go first, I'm going to let you go first.
All right, I'm ready. Couple quick short ones today. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you finally taking some advice and giving me the respect and admiration I deserve. All right, so I can barely say that with a straight face. All right. Google has a new Chrome add-in. I'll put the link in the show notes and the chat. It's called Password Checkup. Pretty obvious on what it does, but it is kind of a handy tool that you and or your clients might want to take advantage of. Just of it is, if you type in a password and that password has been on a breach list, Google is going to let you know that so that you don't use that password anymore. Second tip is not a tip. It's all about me, and I posted this in the CRP group as well. I am looking for suggestions on the best tech backpack. I need a new backpack. I really like the Briggs & Riley brand. That's what I carry now. But Briggs & Riley, my strap broke. The nice thing about Briggs & Riley is it's guaranteed forever. So I'll be getting a repaired or new Briggs & Riley. But it sent me to Amazon to look for a new one. So I'm looking for suggestions. Hit me up on the CRP group or send me an email to john@mavengroup.net. I'd love to know what your favorite tech backpack is. Next little tip is, I use this a lot when I'm dealing in firewalls. Let's say you're adding a new service and the service provider says, hey, you got to whitelist this stuff for me. Here's all the IP addresses you need to list. And a lot of times you'll just get some sort of regurgitation or throw up list of IP addresses. And usually what you want to do is you might want to turn those into what's called a CIDR range. So you only have to make one entry if those IP addresses happen to be in order. So little tool I use is called IP2 CIDR, and I'll put the link in the show notes and the chat. That's just a handy little tool to use. And last but not least is just something I came across in my feed. It seems like a lot of guys make images and do a lot of stuff if they're doing a Windows restore or Windows install. And I ran across this program called NT Lite. Read the description, which is a Windows configuration tool that allows you to modify your existing Windows install or an image yet to be deployed. Remove Windows components, configure and integrate, speed up Windows deployment, process, etc., etc., etc. I'll have a link to that, but I thought guys that do a lot of imaging or might need that to adjust their images and had not heard about it, that could be a handy tool. But that is my tips for the week in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've used NT Lite. It's probably back in the Windows XP days, and it was a great, solid little program, and it absolutely worked.
Well, the great thing about it is they're continuously updating. The latest update is February 6th. So
that's awesome.
Obviously that's going to probably support the latest version of Windows and all that. So if you're doing that kind of thing, I think that might be a handy tool. And the interface, just looking at it and reading the article, I got to be honest, I don't even know why I went to it. It looks really nice. It actually kind of intrigued me to maybe even try it. So.
All right, cool. Well, if you do, let us know.
You got it.
All right, and Paco, what kind of a tip, story, or trick or something in between do you have for us this week?
Oh, I got a whole lot of nothing. But no, so actually I was talking to Mike Sodowski over at Magnus Box, and on a completely separate note, I've been trying to figure out a better way to communicate to my clients, whether it's being, via email, whether it's through our web chat and things like that. And through Drift, apparently, which is the tool that we use for our website chat, there's a way to configure it to set up a calendar with appointments. So in the event, and I've had a lot of clients where if they can't get a hold of me through phone or email, they'll try to chat with me on the chat, and sometimes I'm not there, I'm on site or I'm doing something, so they think that that's a way to instantly get a hold of me because it pops up when they go to the website. So there's a way to configure it on their first tier to basically set up a time for meetings and basically to set up an appointment, and that'll go ahead and sync into my calendar. So in the event that I do have that free time or I'm away from my um, desk and at an on-site, they'll know when I'm next available. So that's something that I got to set up, but saw it set up on his side, and looks like it's been helping him out with managing his time as he's kind of floating around.
Awesome. Yeah, we always need to use tools that will manage our time better than we can do manually ourselves. So that's good.
Yep.
All right. So last week we had a little had a couple of debacles, and I guess I'll go ahead and explain that. First of all, I tried to switch a couple of USB ports on my particular computer. I was just switching the camera, which is supposed to be an HD 4K camera, whatever, webcam. Nothing really fancy. I was trying to put it in a different port that I was using for my audio sound card for my mixer. I was just switching them, no big deal. I had cleared everything out in the device manager, or so I had thought, but my camera wouldn't come up for some reason, and the mixer, the audio sound card wasn't working. So there was a conflict. Well, going back to the old days when you had to go into device manager and get rid of anytime you plug in a new USB device to another USB port, it'll install as a secondary, third, so on and so forth. And so you'll see your device manager get clogged up with all these different sound cards, headsets, etc. So sometimes what you need to do, and this is what I actually did after the show, is you actually have to unplug those devices from your computer, go in and under device manager, show that you view all the grayed out stuff. And basically, once you do, you go in there, you pull that stuff out. You can delete it from inside Device Manager, get rid of those things, restart your computer, and then go ahead and plug the devices back into the USB ports that you want, and they'll see them as a brand new device, not as a number 2, number 3, number 4, etc. And that basically solved the problem. Now, the reason I was switching USB ports was USB 3.1, which is technically there's a USB 3.1, and I believe there's a like a version A or version B or something like that. I can't quite remember. I read a small article on it. Basically, all the blue USB ports that they used to call USB 3.0, I guess they're all technically USB 3.1, which is a standard, which is really USB 3.0. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. Anyways, you get about 5 gigabytes per second or something like that across the that USB port. Well, the USB 3.1, whatever it is, the red one that's on the back of my computer, you actually get double that. You get 10 gigabytes per second. So that's why I was trying to switch it for my camera just to see if I would get rid of any artifacts or if it would operate a little bit better as far as being able to pull and I don't use 4K or anything like that, but just the high definition video and see if it would clean it up. Because it always bugged me that I have such a beefy computer, but sometimes you look at the video and you're like going, wow, that's really pixelated. And then I started noticing on other YouTube channels, anytime you kind of blow stuff up and zoom in, even the people that are using high end cameras, a lot of times they're pixelated. So it's probably compression and all that kind of stuff that we're using on YouTube and etc. So, anyways, not a big deal, just an experiment. But anyways, I wanted to let everybody know that because going in there and getting rid of old things that you have clogging up your device manager, we used to have to do it a lot more back in the day because it would clog up really fast and cause all kinds of wonky problems with Windows 98, Windows XP, so on and so forth. So that was my tip for this week. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll get into our main topics. Yes, I did say topics. All right, TechCon Unplugged. Be there, be square, September 20th through the 22nd, 2019 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Here's what you're going to get. You're going to get all meals and snacks at the event. We're going to take care of you Friday night, Saturday, breakfast and lunch, Sunday, breakfast and lunch. And guess what? Also, Saturday night dinner at Dave and Buster's, where you can come hang out. We'll have our own room where we can hang out, eat some good food. Hopefully it's good. Not promising anything, but hopefully it's good food. I've never had a bad meal there. And you can hang out. If you want to play games, you can. If not, you can just hang out and chat with others in the community. That's what this event is all about. It's about you all getting together and just communicating with each other and learning from each other. And not only that, having a place to kind of blow off a little bit of steam, because a lot of us will get into this business and we'll be that island by ourselves and not really thinking that anybody else is going through the same things we are. And the thing is, the more people you talk to in the community, you'll understand that we all do the same stuff and we all get the same results and we all get the stupid customers and we all get good customers. And everything that we do is the same. But it's nice to hear that somebody else is going through some things that you might be going through, or maybe you can help somebody else out with, how you fixed a certain problem. And that's what it's all about. So that is going to be September 20th through the 22nd, 2019. Go to techconunplugged.com. Get your tickets now. We have a feeling within the next month or two, we're probably going to end up selling out. We're not going to say what that number is, but I would encourage people to get your tickets earlier than later. Remember, it's also a tax write-off. Yeah, be there. And the two gentlemen on this panel, they'll be there right with me. Actually, if it wasn't for Paco, this thing wouldn't even be happening. So appreciate what he's done to force my
Yeah, I'm
hand.
pretty much doing nothing, Jeff. Thanks
Yeah,
for throwing me under the bus again. I appreciate that.
John just let us borrow his hometown. That was it. So he said, "Hey, come here. Come
Can
to
you at
my
least give the
backyard."
horn a little honk before you back up over me? Just beep, beep. No, it's true. Paco's doing all the work. Amen, brother.
All right, so let's go into our main topic, and that's going to be, we are going to catch up on a bunch of topics that we've been collecting over the last, I don't know, probably year, and we're just going to kind of go through them. Some of these questions have been talked about on certain shows, so we're going to kind of touch on a couple things and see maybe if we have some new perspectives on some of these questions or what our thoughts are nowadays compared to what it was the last time we answered the question. And this stuff needs to be revisited every now and again because this is the stuff we do all the time. All right. So the very first topic we're going to talk about is knowing your value or worth to customers. And Paco, I'm going to throw this one over to you as he's taking a sip.
So it depends on the context of knowing your worth or knowing your value. But essentially, the big, at least for what I can say to it, is understand that people will view you for how much you are trying to get for your services. So if you're the cheapest guy in town, they're going to treat you like the cheapest guy in town. If you demand a little bit higher premium, you'll get the clients that will respect what you know. You're going to get some that may not really like the pricing, but those are the clients you probably are not going to want in the first place. The biggest gain from knowing what your value is to understand what you feel is your knowledge, and then times that by 10, because you don't know that what you have as your experience, your history, tools that you've learned, being involved in our community and just other items that you look on your own, that is a value that is worth something to someone else. And until you demand more from yourself to those customers, you will never know that. So things like listening to us, attending other conferences, understanding that, getting the idea of speaking with other people and just understanding, okay, you're kind of in my area, you're kind of charging this around there. I'm charging half of what you're charging. Maybe I need to step it up. And if you feel like you are not worth that amount of money, then that's an issue that you have to figure out for yourself. Why do you feel that way? Is it knowledge? Is it tools? Is it manpower? And how do you address that? And that's kind of those things on how to understand what your value is and how do you communicate that to a customer.
Awesome. John, what say you?
I agree 100% with Paco said. I think if I was going to narrow it down into one sentence, it would be do not give yourself away. Continuous improvement always. I think those are the two things that Paco touched on. I might take the topic a little bit further. If I was going to circle back, obviously there's times that you give things away, whether you're trying to just get some points so that you have something to argue about when you get to the pearly gates, or if you're just trying to take care of something or pay it forward, that's one thing. But, if you're going to be working on the weekends or at nights and all that, make sure you're charging your customers accordingly for what you're doing at those times. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with working 90 hours a week. Just make sure you're not doing it for free, that sort of thing. But the other thing is, my question or my comment is how are you imparting that value that you're giving to your clients? Do your clients understand actually what you're doing for them? Do they understand, are you communicating all of the services that you're providing them? Do they understand how important you are to their business as a quote unquote managed service provider and not just a break fix provider? I mean, if you're doing a good job, you should not be putting out antivirus fires. You should not be, the little things that we always used to talk about way back when in the break fix world, when people used to show up to the counters at our shops and all that with viruses on their computer, the things you're doing should be more value added now. So if you look into whatever you're using to track your business, whether that's your accounting program, your ticketing system, your PSA, or your spreadsheet, whatever it is that you're doing to make your magic in your business, and the items you're seeing on the list are not value added lists, meaning you're not helping improving your customer's business, then you're really not providing value. You're just an expense item. So the value is preventative maintenance, building value, reducing costs, streamlining processes, using technology more effectively. So just make sure that you're focusing on that value as a managed service provider if that's your business model.
Very good. And I'll just add to that a lot of times in this business, relationships, which a lot of companies don't have with their customer base, goes a long way. And there are a lot of things that can be forgiven sometimes when you have that good relationship. When a mistake is made, it's not as big an ordeal as it could be if you're just, like John said, a line item where you don't have that relationship built up with your customer. And I'll say this too, is that don't ever cut yourself short. I can tell you right now, from the person that's just starting off today to the person that's been doing this for 20 years, there are a lot of smart people in the room. And there's a lot of knowledge out there. And there's a lot of things that sometimes when you've been in this business for a while, you forget. So it's good to be reminded by people coming up and going, hey, what about doing it this way? And you kind of learn those things. So don't ever cut yourself short. You are valuable, and you're doing something that somebody's going to pay you to do because they don't want to educate themselves to learn how to do it themselves. So to me, if my furnace goes down, which that happened to me on the coldest day of the year. Don't ask me how that happened, but whatever. I can't remember if I talked about it or not. That was my Ecobee thermostat, I think, threw a wrench in there. Anyways, got it back up and running. But to be honest with you, if it had been anything beyond that, I probably would have had to call somebody out. Say, hey, look at this. Yeah, could I troubleshoot it? Could I, yeah, I could probably do it. And 2 or 3 days later, I would probably have heat because I think I'm fairly smart. I could figure it out. There's not that many components to it. But I could have somebody that has the equipment come out, take care of it, have me back up and running the same day. That's the difference. That's the power that we have. And I think a lot of people forget that. All right. This is going to kind of go into that same type of thing, but that is setting pricing guidelines. I'm just starting out. And keeping in mind that it's harder to raise rates after being established, and you don't want to race anyone to the bottom. How do you determine what is flat rate compared to time and material? John, I'm going to let you start off on this one because I know this is a big one for you. Exactly.
So you just kind of, sometimes beep beep. Anyways, yeah, that's exactly what I do. Everything I do is flat rate, and I pick the price kind of based on my experience in the industry. Obviously, I'm a lot older than the other guys. I kind of know what I do. I know the clients that I deal with. I've been doing it long enough that I kind of know all the surprises that might happen. I say that with a grain of salt because every Monday brings maybe a surprise or two new that I haven't run into before. But where to start your pricing? And I think I talked about this way back in Canada when I was running a workshop. I always say charge as much as you can. Do all your research. Obviously, you should research in your market. Somebody that's in Iowa City, Iowa is not going to be able to charge probably as much as in downtown Chicago because the market just doesn't bear it. And, we've kind of reviewed all these things, but don't try to be the cheapest guy just because you're starting out. Charge a little bit more. So if you're charging twice as much as the next guy, well, you can put that money into becoming proficient in what you're doing. And your service will be better. You'll make more money. You'll be happier. You'll be better trained. You'll have better tools. Your website will be nicer. You'll have a nice custom shirt. You'll be driving a nicer car that won't break down. So you'll get to your appointments. So, all of that leverage is on what you're going to initially charge. So don't race to the bottom. That might be the wisest statement in that whole, that opening thing. I would suggest even if you're the newest guy on the block, you should never be the cheapest guy on the block. If you are the cheapest guy on the block, make sure you raise your prices so that you're not. But as far as a simple answer that says where should you start and what is not, I think that how did the question state, Jeff?
How do you determine what is flat rate compared to time and material?
Well, there's two ways to do that, and that's where I think I was heading before I forgot what the actual question was.
Squirrel.
Squirrel. I am a flat rate client, and I have been for the last 15 years. All my clients pay a monthly flat rate, and it includes everything. There are very few things that fall outside of that. If they break it, they pay to get it fixed. So if they want to do some shadow IT or if they want to do it, or if it's a large product, or I do have a list of things in my quote unquote 1-page, 3/4 page contract that spells out that I'm not handling the wiring, I'm not doing any sort of printer repair or hardware repair. I'll do the basics and all that, but I'm not disassembling a printer to get it fixed and putting a new fuser in the back of it unless it's simple to do. If it's advanced server work, and that's exactly what I say, advanced server work, so it leaves it open-ended for me, or a couple other little things, it just kind of covers me, that I can pretty much pick and choose what I'm going to bill hourly for. But I take this back to the value to my clients. If I was to circle back around and I say, even sometimes if they break it, I'll still eat that and cover it under my base amount, unless it's really egregious or it's something like I said, don't do this, and they still do it, because you're building the value. So even if the client knows they were wrong, they're not going to want to pay for it. So you have to sort of judge that. If it's their fault, they should pay for it, and don't feel bad charging for it. Again, it's your value to your clients. They stepped outside of that bound. But when you're setting what is not covered under that base rate, leave it kind of open-ended. Advanced server work. Well, the client doesn't really know what that means, but you're also an honest technician. So you're not going to take advantage of that. And keep in mind that what you're charging the client for, they're not going to like getting that extra invoice because they're used to paying whatever that monthly is. So again, it's a balance. A good example would be I have a client that's been a long-term client probably since I started my business, and actually Paco helped me with this gig. We did some server upgrades. They have 4 different servers. We had to do some work over a weekend. Paco came out and helped me, so I paid him. Well, that's not covered under the base rate, all right, because I got an extra tech on site helping me. So they get about 15 hours of extra billing just for that weekend for Paco and I to be there on top of their base rate. And I told them that before they happened, and they were happy to pay it. So, that's the way I would address that, sort of an on-needed basis. Again, I can hear Matt Rainey yelling in my ear in the back of my head, it's all about that value. Don't shortchange yourself. Don't just include it. make sure you're billing for what should be billed for. Don't give it away.
Awesome. Paco?
Similar to what John has mentioned as well. One of the things that I think was in that email was, how do you raise rates once you've established those rates? Was that what part of that
It
email
said,
was?
keeping in mind that it is harder to raise rates after being established.
Okay. What I say is the best time to raise rates normally for everyone is either toward the end of their renewal of their sole quote unquote contract, or if you're doing month to month. I like to usually do it around November to let them know what's going on. Um, Basically, what I think is the bigger piece of it all is you want to make sure that you um, are comfortable with what you're selling. I think the biggest piece is you can always say what rates you should charge. There are rates that you can always say that you should do. Is my audio good? Or
You're fine.
okay, just making
Keep
sure.
going.
No, I see the pop up coming up, audio adjusted, so I know that this USB has some problems sometimes. Um, so I think the biggest piece of it is, be comfortable what you're advertising your rates are, and make sure that you can speak to and sell it. I think that a lot of us try to say, okay, I want to charge, like for me, I was charging at 175 an hour. And at that rate, I was getting clients, but I always didn't feel comfortable with that price because I got more no's than yes, even though explaining the value and everything that what we do. And I've changed the messaging, I did everything, and this didn't work. I actually lowered it back to my original rate to 150, and now it's just gangbusters because I'm more comfortable speaking to that. And I adjusted some of the services to adhere to the $25 drop. But the biggest piece is sell what you're comfortable with, sell what you will remember, so that when you're in front of a customer, you're not stammering on, oh, well, if we do this, it'll be that rate. If it's this, you want to have a clear, concise messaging, which is why I always explain to everyone who I onboard, we have 3 different type of pricing. It's either going to be hourly, retainer, or monthly. And once they hear that, I give them the details of each one. Normally, I sell the middle, which is really what I like to do, which is similar to what Mike Smith does. Sells pre-sales 10 hours, uses those 10 hours, rebills again, because you're getting paid for the hours that you're using. But for those managed services, it is one of those where you have to understand that as you go flat rate, like John said, you got to make sure that you have enough room to upsell and make money outside of that rate. And especially when it comes to bigger issues or advanced work, you're not kind of pigeonholing yourself in the all you can eat plans as you move forward.
Hey, Jeff, if I could add on to what Paco said, I think he hit upon or touched upon something pretty lightly that I think it's pretty important. Keep in mind that if you post your prices on your website, like let's say you have a good, better, and best plan, you've now eliminated yourself to deal with those clients that might be a PETA. So, because they're going to expect to pay what's on your website. So I'm on your good plan, so I pay, I'm just going to do round up, $5 per PC a month or whatever that might be. Well, sometimes with certain clients, you might want to, even though they're on the good plan, you might want to charge them $15 a month because they're just that much work. So, keep in mind on posting your prices that sometimes that can limit the flexibility you have in your business. And then I would also warn against changing your prices a lot, because just imagine the bills that you get in the mail. Let's say your RMM provider said, well, you're $1 per month this month, but 2 months from now, it's going to be $2.50 a month. And then the next month is something happens and it maybe even comes down. But then again, the price changes again 3 months later and goes back up. One, that creates chaos for you in managing what you're going to charge the client. Some that, you might make less, more, change your pricing with your client, which is going to affect that. Where your client feels the same way based on their expensing. So they're used to getting hit for $5 a month, $5 a month, $5 a month, $5 a month. If that changes, a lot of that can affect your client's budgeting as well. So keep that in mind too.
Very good. And I will say there's a lot of different ways that you can approach your pricing, and there is some flexibility in doing time and materials or just doing a flat rate. And I do kind of a hybrid approach, which most people do in some form or fashion. And that is, for some of the stuff that if you bring me your computer, and this is mostly for residential stuff, right? You bring me that computer, it's going to be, if I'm doing a virus removal, it might be $89, whatever. If we get it in and we do a diagnostic on it, we figure there's a hard drive failing or whatever, those rates will change. And one of the things that I did back in my Google advertising days with AdWords is I made sure I put that price in there. So I put the $89 because in this area, $89 was that point where it was like, hey, you're professional but you're not the $50 guy. So I got a lot less tire kickers because of that. And now people that know, like, and trust me, whatever I charge, I charge. And again, it's the flexibility of being able to change things. Now, the difference is if I go on site, I don't charge trip rates and all that kind of stuff. I charge from when I get into my car till I get out of my car back at the house. That's so if it's a half hour there and I spend an hour there and it's a half hour back, that's 2 hours. So that's what I charge because to be honest with you, I charge those rates when I come out. And there are a lot of times where my customers who are sending me a check in the mail, they still add money to that. So that tells me I'm still not charging enough. I could actually charge more because it was worth it for them to have me come out and do whatever it is I needed on premise versus, maybe doing something remotely or whatever. So people are people that appreciate what we do because they don't want to do it. Those are the types of customers you want anyways. Like these guys are saying, if there's the pain in the butts out there, just, you know what, let them go by the wayside. But yeah, you can do a lot of different things. When it comes to, there's formulas that people use and that's fine. I try to keep everything simple. I charge $80 an hour. Why do I do that? Because I don't do the trip charges and all that kind of stuff. And it's easy math for me. Every 15 minutes is $20. Done. It's easy on my finances. It's easy on my tax returns and all that kind of stuff. So it's just easier to do it that way for me. And because I'm not adding on all these fees, you know what you're getting. It's going to be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever.
And you just mentioned a fantastic benefit to posting your price in because you will eliminate those clients that you don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I'm with you, John. I wouldn't put I have a list of my prices. I keep a price sheet hanging on the wall because quite honestly, I can't remember it a lot of times. A customer calls, I got to look at the price sheet. Oh yeah.
Or what you might do is put that pricing on there and then, do the little asterisk or whatever it says starting at, or, based
Right.
on configuration, or give yourself a way to adjust that as needed for whatever that reason might be.
Exactly. So, yeah. Anyways, that's that. But yeah, just figure out what's going to work for you. And I was going to say about hardware. We think about things like hard drives and stuff like that. And a lot of people will do a percentage, and I don't. I usually round things up. When I was getting spinning hard drives for, the 2.5 inch or the 3.5 inch, they were around 70 some odd dollars for a 1 terabyte drive. Okay. Now I can get a 500 gigabyte SSD for around the same price, 67, 70 bucks, right? With tax and all that. Well, however you're doing it. Anyways, so just let's say around 70 bucks. I just charge 100 for that. I just round it up to the next of it because you know what? That pays for part of me taking the thing apart, putting it in when I look at it, that justifies my time. And that's really what it gets down to. If you're paying your taxes and you're doing all the right things you're supposed to do, you have to figure out what you're basically making per hour sometimes, because most people would be appalled and they would quit today. But if you can make it, and John and I were talking about this before the show, it doesn't matter. There's a price for everything. You can get paid for doing something that you absolutely hate to do, but if you get paid enough money, you'll actually do it probably with a smile on your face, even though you hate to do it. So there is a price. But anyways.
Well, we're leaving out one really important part to choosing your price. If you go back to the pricing show, our friend Jerry Bransfield provided a pretty basic but awesome spreadsheet that the first thing you need to do before you pick your pricing is to decide what it's going to cost to run your business.
Yes.
Is it just you? What about what you need to support your family? Obviously, your expenses, what you want to make. What about your retirement, your insurance, your vehicle, blah, 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 your trips to wonderful Grand Rapids, Michigan, and or Honolulu, Hawaii, wherever you want to go on your vacations, you have to determine where's that baseline, where's that break-even point, and then where your profitability is going to come from. So, I mean, it's really easy to just go to other people's website, see a price, and say, okay, I'm going to charge this. But if you don't really have at least a basic understanding where that number is to break even, you're going to get yourself in trouble somewhere.
Right. And that IT sheet is still there's a link in the show notes, and it's free IT business paperwork, I think is what it's called. And you click on that link, and I have shared all those documents that people have shared with us over time. Feel free to go in there anytime and check those out. You can download them, and they were provided to us for free. So we're giving them away to the audience for free. All right. Let's see. If you are a residential break fix just starting out, what should you have in place from the get-go, and what can wait until you're more established? RMM, AV, backup, ticketing, tools, etc. It's easy to get overwhelmed with all the great suggestions. Paco, I'm going to throw that one to you.
Yeah. Starting out is always a interesting time, because I always try to look back and try to grab what's still relevant now. It really is just dependent on how you want to run your business. Specific here to services, if you're trying to do residential break fix where people are bringing stuff to you, um, the best services that could suggest is paperwork. That's going to be one of the things where you elect in a service like TechNibble, or if you elect with other, just getting that kind of sorted out, and a way to intake and notate those repairs. So, back then I used Repair Shopper. And as I grew from my portion of being break fix to, uh, as a IT business servicing small businesses, Repair Shopper was a great starting point, because that allowed me to notate all the repairs, create the tickets, communicate with the customers. It allowed that all-in-one feature set there. Um, you're going to want to figure out a way to take payments. So that service is going to be whether you do it through PayPal, through Stripe, or through the integrations that you have in your CRM system, which in this case, Repair Shopper has a partnership with a processor. That would be another route you want to take a look at as well. Outside of that, really you just want to just vet a couple sites for parts and outsource, and just make sure you have the right tool set. I think we've all talked about where really, as you're starting out, just grab a screwdriver set. iFixit has a lot of great ones. Tech Tools, I think, was the one John brought up at one point. I have a set right here. Tecton, that's what it is.
Tecton, yep.
So
Cheap
I
and
have
easy,
my
yep,
set.
yep.
Yep. So I have that as my home set there. And then you just buy things as you need them. I think when I first started out, I think I went to Micro Center and bought I think it was like a certified, I forgot what kind of kit it was, but basically it was a screwdriver, um, a couple pliers, little tips for stripping and removing cable, and I think there was even a data connector for IDE at the time. So, those are really the basics that you should get. And then as jobs come up, as we've talked about in the show, that's when you purchase the equipment. You get your duplicators, you get your services, you get your things like that. But it's really on how you are looking to establish your business at that moment and where you see yourself growing. That's really where it gauges on what tools, but especially as you're starting out, you want to keep it as simple as possible.
Very good. John?
I agree with all that 100%. So if I was going to break it down, I'd say, one, get a client. Don't worry about any of that stuff first. Get a client. All right? Because the rest of it really doesn't make any sense. So you don't have to have an AV to resell, all that kind of stuff. You have Amazon to buy your parts. You'll get it in a day or two. You can work out the heavy stuff in the later. The second thing I would suggest is documentation. Make sure you have a way to do your documentation, and I would wrap that into accounting. So the way I would start, if I was going to start out on, and this goes into my next step, is I would just use QuickBooks Online, because you can put all your customer information in there, you can put your products, your services, and you're going to start your foundation of your accounting, which is extremely important in building what we're talking about as a business. So once you have that, make sure you do find yourself an accountant. Very cheap just to get the basics, but you want to make sure you're doing that right. And your accountant can also guide you to get what you need to do business in your area, as far as licensing, incorporating, all that kind of stuff. They will have some knowledge on that. They probably won't do it, but they'll know the people that can help you with it. And if you have a trusted accountant, you can probably trust them as advisors. And then the next step is, in the way that I approach it, is resell things to your clients that make your life easier, because it will make their life easier. Resell, find a product that takes good care of your clients as far as AV protection, because that will protect them. You'll make a little bit of money, which makes your life easier, and then you won't have to screw around with virus cleanups. Get an RMM so you can proactively monitor them. That makes your life easier. You make a little bit of money because you're protecting them, which makes their lives easier. So, anything that's value added for the customer that you can make money on is a value add for you. So if you're making your life easier and it translates into making the customers either home PC or business PC or whole IT infrastructure run better, that's a win-win for everybody.
Very well said. And I will say, don't go chasing pennies. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times you will see, especially in these forums and groups, you will see people talk about, hey, I can save a couple pennies over here by buying this product or buying that product and changing over. But what we never count is, we never count the amount of time it takes to actually switch over our customer base from one vendor to another vendor to save a little bit of money. Now, if you're getting horrible service, that's a whole different discussion. But a lot of times I see too many people, chasing the pennies, and it's just not worth it. Go out there, do what you need to do what's going to make your life easier, like John said, and you will be much, much happier. And plus, you're not paying for it. You're going to pass that cost to your customer. And it's a win-win, because you're taking care of the customer better, and you're going to charge them maybe a little bit more. You're going to charge them a few more pennies. But every time I see people chasing these things, it's like, oh, my margins, my margins. Listen, you're not going to make a living off backup. Sorry, you're not. You're not going to make a living off, having an RMM client. All these little things they're little add-tos, and like John said, really to make your life easier. So just keep that in mind, and keep things simple. Don't try to overcomplicate it. Sometimes there are better products that come to the market. Most of the time, if you're using a product or service that is working and you don't have any issues with it, and you have good support, and you've got that friendly vendor communication, then stick with that. That just makes more sense.
Here's the last step I'll add on, if I can, is and it's a little bit of self-promotion for TechCon or Channel Pro or anything like that. So you're at the point, you got a couple clients, you started your documentation, you just got the basics in line. I mean, really something like TechCon or Channel Pro, where you're going to meet guys that have, or gals that have, like businesses, same size, same type. That's the value of going there, because you can say, what are you doing? Because as tight as the three of us are, and what we do, you do things differently than I do, Jeff, just based on how your business is. Paco and I do a lot of the same things. Look at Jerry posting in the chat the link to Google Drive for his sheet. Thanks, Jerry, and I'll post that in the show notes too on this one. But Paco does things a lot different too. We use different vendors. I'm a Dell guy. Paco, you're still using a lot of Lenovo, right? So there's advantages or disadvantages to both. So, and there's no wrong or right answer. It's, what Paco's customers want, or what, whether you're rocking HP, ASUS, whoever you're rocking, but you're going to learn from those guys things about those vendors that you might not know, because I am a Dell guy, where Paco might say, well, really? Dell doesn't do that for you? Lenovo does this for us, that kind of thing. Or what tools, what RMM, what AV, what blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, that's the advantage to a conference.
Awesome. Well said. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll finish up with the last few topics we have. Our show today brought to you by FreshBooks. Small business owners, it's time to be honest about how you feel when dealing with your day-to-day admin work. Admit it, You can't stand it. It's a total grind. Truth is, over 5 million small business owners felt exactly the same way until they discovered FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the dead simple cloud accounting software that's transforming how small business owners handle their paperwork. One of the things we mentioned was accounting software, and here's one for you. Using FreshBooks to create and send an invoice literally takes about 30 seconds. There's no formulas or formatting, just perfectly crafted invoices every time, unlike using things like Excel. Your clients you can pay online, which often means you end up getting paid a lot faster. There's a super handy deposit feature so you can invoice for a payment upfront when you're kicking off a project. Remember, get paid for that hardware upfront so you're not holding the bag on that stuff. FreshBooks can even show you whether or not a client has looked at the invoice you've emailed. Hey, did you get my invoice? What invoice? It says you opened it up like 3 times. Oh, that invoice. Yes. That way you can keep people honest. Not that they're being dishonest, but hey, sometimes people need a little reminder. And once they know, they'll pay those a lot faster. This is only a fraction of what FreshBooks can do for you. You owe it to yourself to feel the full effect of FreshBooks on you and your small business. For a 30-day free trial, just go to freshbooks.com/podnuts. Enter podnuts in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Thank you for FreshBooks sponsoring this episode of the Computer Repair Podcast. All right, so let's go back.
Hey, Jeff, I got to break in and say, because this doesn't happen very often, that you actually taught me something this week.
Really?
Well, yeah, because I didn't realize there was USB 3.1 Gen 2.
Gen 2, thank you. That's what it was, yes.
Yes. I'll put this is in the show notes too, and I put a link in the chat as well. But there is actually USB 3.1 Gen 1, and 3.1 Gen 2.
Yes.
Which I didn't realize that. So thanks.
Now, my understanding is, from what I read, is USB 3.0 and USB 3.1 Gen 1 are identically the same.
5 gigabits. Yep. Gen 2 is 10 gigabits. Yes. Or super speed 10.
I guess. We'll see if when I look at this video later, if it improved anything. Who knows?
Roger that.
Can't improve my looks, though. There's no help there. I'm in IT. Anyways. I just offended a bunch of us. All right, so how do you know when it's time to hire an employee, rent a storefront, quit your day job, or any other milestones? Oh gosh, John, I'm gonna throw that over to you, man. What do you got?
Well, besides my pick it out of the air, put your fingers up in the air and let the breeze. You let the numbers lead you. Again, I go back to what I said about getting started. One of the first things you have to have is a good accounting system. At some point, you will see in your accounting system on when you can afford, and a CPA will help you guide this well, when you can afford an employee, when you can afford a storefront, that sort of thing. Depending on the type of services that you're doing and where you are, storefront would be a tough one to answer. If you're in a market that has no other storefront, there's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't understand about that because I've never run a storefront. I've had office space, but never had a storefront. So, I mean, that one I would be very careful with. But if you're in a community that has no technology storefront or anything like that, you might be in a position to really service the community. So, but again, I would always fall back to you let the numbers lead you. You're losing out on clients, you're losing out on billable time. And keep in mind that a lot of the times your first employee might not be another technician. Your first employee might be somebody that's doing that can be offloaded into a bookkeeping role, a CPA role, some other role where you can continue to do more tech work and you don't have to do the busy work of running your business. And I'm going to kind of stop there because I know Paco has more to say about that.
Yeah. Exactly like what you said. It's the moment you start realizing you're losing, and that's losing time, losing funds, losing. So that's kind of what I'm running into, and what I have ran into in the last 3 months, since November till now, and got to the point where I said I need to get an admin. Or office manager, however you want to call that role. And it's getting to the point where it's so bad now that I'm actually who I'm going to hire in April. I'm bringing her on a virtual assistant basis, part-time, 3 days out of the week, because exactly that. I'm finding myself that where I'm doing a lot of the work, I'm still working in my business, and I get to the point where I want to work on my business, but the day is over. So I don't get a lot of the stuff to, the billing, the invoices, the things that I have to send out that I don't have their cards on file, or if I do have it on file, I cut the batch. I miss the batch time to cut over to get the funds in by next day to process the parts, so I lose a day. The cash flow of things, and just communications as well. I've noticed that now, I tell my customers I try to reply back to them between 1 to 2 hours, and that's just a response. And I'm in the middle of something, or I get too involved, or I'm traveling, and I'm finding myself cutting that deadline soon a lot toward the edge of that 1 to 2 hours more often than I like. So being able to offload that's what's letting me know that I'm ready for some help, and I'm deciding to do the admin part, so that way I can take care of all the back office stuff up front, so now I can worry about getting clients in and not worrying about billing them once I close them.
Keep in mind, there's also another way to go before you hire. Depending on how you want to grow your business and what you want to do with your business, hiring employees is also a great way to create a team environment if you don't want to be a solo tech. But also, before you hire, you can also just raise your rates. Raising your rates should reduce the volume of work you have while creating more income and profit. So, there's benefits and downfalls, pitfalls to both of those ways. Managing an employee, whether it's a part-time or virtual or whatever, is a lot of work. But just keep that in mind too.
And I'm going to deal with one of the things that was talked about, and that is in quitting your day job. And there's a couple different ways that you can look at this. And there's many scenarios that I've seen over the past few years, talking to different owners and what they've done. A lot of times there will be people that might have a job where they have some sort of retirement, and they'll get to the point where they're ready to retire from that job, but they're not ready to retire because they're still young enough to go out there and get it, kill it, and cook it up and eat it, as John usually says. So one of the things you can look at is you've got a retirement coming in, and you're going to make money on top of that running your own business there. That gives you a little bit of a cushion, or you've got regular money coming in, because a lot of people that's important, and you can keep that money flowing and then run your business and grow it organically. The other thing I would say is, if you wanted to do that, and whether you're young, old, it doesn't really matter. But if you wanted to quit your day job, depending on what your day job's bringing in, now there's a lot of people will just look at their income as replacing their income, and they'll go, okay, now I'm ready to jump ship. Let's hold on a little bit. All right, so there's income, but there's also things like healthcare, other benefits, 401k, et cetera, et cetera. So what you need to do is you need to look at all your options and look at, okay, if I was going to have to pay for my own healthcare, if I was going to have to pay for my own 401k, I don't have any matching with my company or whatever, what's that going to look like? So again, a lot of us like to play with the numbers and make it on the soft side. And really, we need to kind of, what I would say is, inflate those numbers a little bit. And I would almost say probably, and this is just me doing the John, pulling stuff out of the air, 1.5 times would probably be the magic spot where I would go, hey, you know what? I literally don't have any more time to put into this business. I'm running almost, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week with my regular day job and my business. And I know if I quit my day job, that I can grow my business from that point and not really lose any money. So there's just, you got to think about everything and do the math for real.
And I'll go back and I'll pimp Jerry again. That is all in that little spreadsheet that he has, from health insurance, disability, other insurance,
Yep.
life insurance, retirement, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you don't want to forget about those things just because you had a real job and now you don't. And also, I'll add into the getting started, a lot of guys say that you don't need to worry about maybe insurance at the beginning. And I would suggest maybe at the micro beginning you don't, but at some point, maybe after you get your second client, you should visit an insurance agent, and your accountant can probably recommend a good one for you. is you at least get some sort of basic coverage so that if you screw something up big time or break something big time, that you have at least some sort of protection. Something.
Yeah.
So.
And that's easy enough to do in today's day and age. Really, a lot of
it's
times.
not expensive.
No.
So, an umbrella policy is not expensive.
Yeah,
so
it's like $20-$30 for at least the general liabilities of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's the what ifs. And is it going to protect everything? Absolutely not. Can you ever have too much insurance? Probably not, according to the experts out there, but we're not experts. So we're just going to say, you know what, just at least do a little bit. Plus, again, if you think about it, you're really not paying for it because you can write this stuff off.
So I got a story for you on that, and so this is one of the transparent stories that I would tell on on Tech Life, but I'll tell it here. Auto insurance. So 6 months ago, as everyone know, things weren't really going well, things like that. I let my auto insurance lapse. And in Illinois, it's illegal to not have state or auto insurance while operating your motor vehicle. So by having it from, I think it was until November, December. So it was about 6 months that I was driving around risking that and not having insurance because that what if factor. I put insurance back on my vehicle because I caught up with everything. I checked everything out. I got everything good to go because things were going in my favor the last 3 to 4 months or 5 months now. I put insurance on the end or on December. Probably about 3 weeks later, my car is involved in an accident. So had I not put the insurance on, and again, because of the gambling that I was making, you never know when you're going to need it. And had I did that, and then I hit a 2019 Acura TL. So not only did I hit just a car, I hit a luxury car. So had that insurance not been there, it would be a very different story today. So I'm thankful that I have the insurance, and I'm glad that I'm paying that. And I would have probably paid more because of what it is that would have cost me in the long run.
Hey, Paco, just so you know, it's actually illegal everywhere not to have car insurance on your car.
My understanding, there's certain states that it's not required.
No.
So is it all the states now? Okay,
Yeah.
So yeah, I understood
you
there
got
was
it.
3 states.
Now, whether they do anything about it, now, gosh, John, stop me.
Yeah, just stop. I mean, Michigan's a little weird. I'm sure there's some state out there that says you don't require it, but that would be asinine. What do we have? POPD here in Michigan, where you have to have some sort of basic thing because at least you have to have what covers the other person or something. I don't know
on your bill, but my bill, I got to pay for underinsured and uninsured motorists every year on mine. So I don't. Anyways.
Yeah, same as mine.
Yes, we understand where you're coming from, Jeff. Those of us that do the correct things are paying for those that don't. So yes.
Well, I'm glad it worked out, Paco. And when it's
amen, brother. Jeez.
Let's go. I'm going to take you to the casino.
That car is cursed. I'm getting rid of it as soon as I can.
The nice thing is there is a casino very close to where the TechCon is. If we did want to, anyways, I digress.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's see, where are we at? Onboarding monthly customers. Let's see.
That's pretty broad.
That's pretty broad. I'll tell you what, let's hold off on that one, and we'll get some other people we'll come on a show, and we'll do a whole show on that. How about cybersecurity?
That's like a 2-minute conversation, sure.
Lipstick on a pig? What?
All right, so what do you, well, let's talk about, real quick, Paco.
Are we talking about cybersecurity insurance? Or are we talking about cybersecurity in general?
In general. So just any thoughts on
Okay, I'm going to pick on you, Jeff. I'm going to make you describe what you were talking about.
It wasn't me. That I didn't get the topic. So, but when I think about cybersecurity, I think about what things can we do what are the common sense things that we should do to protect our customers? You shouldn't even have to. Again, having a word like cybersecurity, yeah, it's kind of stupid, to be honest. It's a new buzzword. It's something that everybody wants to throw around, kind of like MSP, whatever. Let me throw around the next buzz. I'm just getting, you know what? For the rest of my career, I'm just going to start making up freaking buzzwords, and I'm going to, it just irritates me. And I'm just going to start throwing them out there. and I'm gonna throw it all at the wall and see what sticks. Anyways,
All
so
right, I'll start. I'm kind of
right.
picking on you, but I'll start with what I think with the basic office needs, and then that at the very least, So I think what we're getting at with cybersecurity is that we need to be right all the time. The bad guys only need to be right once.
Yep.
So that's the importance. So you have to have what we call the onion or layers of security, and let's just walk through that. If we go from the outside in, I think you need some sort of DNS security, more than just using Google DNS, but at the very least, you should be rocking like Quad 9 or something that adds some security layers. Not that Google doesn't, but you probably want to look into some sort of paid security DNS service so that you can do a little bit more tracking. The next thing you wanted to do, your AV client on your endpoints should have some sort of, besides just regular old AV, I mean, let's just put antivirus as a static, but on top of that, some sort of web protection that's doing some sort of filtering on both the port level and just kind of watching things that are going on. Any good corporate level product should have that. Bitdefender, Kaspersky, all those guys have that. You want to do something to do some sort of ransomware or exploit mitigation. Again, your AV product should have something built in to do that. PUM and PUP protection, your AV should be able to handle that. Something like Malwarebytes is good to have. What do they say? 80% of infections come from things that aren't patched. So your RMM product, 99 Pro, so your Windows, your third party, those should be patched. And then my last thing, and we're talking about the basics. We're not getting into the UTMs and all that. The last thing is you should be monitoring the IP addresses and domains for reputation, meaning it's since you don't have a UTM to see exactly what's happening, but the customer has a static IP address, which I would recommend every customer has. If something's spewing from there or they're spamming from there, at least if you have a service that's monitoring that, you'll know when they end up on a blacklist or something like that. So at the very least, that is the baseline of protection I would say you need for cybersecurity. That's the cheap. That's it. You can't do any less than that.
Paco.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think cybersecurity is just a buzzword to what we're kind of doing right now. Everyone's getting spooked from our clients on what they're hearing on the news, and they need to group it under some type of term, which, dark web and cybersecurity, and, even now in our industries, we're coming out with terms. I think it was Rick who posted it in the chat. Now they're coming out with this term called MSSPs, which is the managed security service providers, and taking advantage of that whole deal. um Everything that John echoed is kind of what I feel is the basics of what every managed service provider slash IT business owner should be doing. um Cybersecurity is one of those where it's advertised as this big thing to try and grab. And on the flip side, there probably are things that we just don't know, which is why we should enlist on those experts, like, the guys that are in this every day and really figuring out what's going on. There are services out there for us to utilize and not try and take it upon ourselves, and not make sure that we don't use the word expert, because that goes back to understanding our value, understanding what we advertise, and then legalities too that John has mentioned on a couple shows before. If we say we are an expert in something that we really don't know what's going on with, it's going to cause us a little bit more problems in the long run than it is trying to gain business saying you're an expert.
I agree with all that. And cybersecurity in anything that we do in IT comes back to the point of common sense practices that we should be doing anyways. And we need to educate ourselves. We need to be educated. That's probably the only reason I still listen to security now, is because even though there's a lot of times where I don't know what Steve Gibson is talking about, I'm getting what's happening out in the real world, what's happening on the interwebs, what is actually affecting real people. And even and Steve is so good that he comes out in a lot of stuff that you will read articles on, and things will pop up and go, "Oh, this is the worst thing since whatever Armageddon." Um, he'll kind of go, "Yeah, there's a couple things that you would have to have in place in order to do this. It still needs to be addressed, but it's not the I'm running all I'm running off the cliff." So that's what I appreciate about that show. It keeps us in the know on what's going on, and I'm sure there's other shows out there like that. But again, common sense practices, and I've said for a long time that back in the day, Microsoft Security Essentials is what I was running on 7 PCs that individual people in my household used. I used OpenDNS with a little bit of basic filtering. I had a decent router, which was acting as my hardware firewall. And I didn't do a whole in the rate of infection was very, very low. Now, with Windows 10, Windows Defender, and all that, it's so there it doesn't happen. I don't get these problems. And my kids are going to the same sites that every other, parents' kids are going to, right? And I don't know. It, I'm not that lucky. I'd rather be lucky than good, but I'm not that lucky. So the reality is there are some basic things to do. And, once you get into these different compliances and stuff like that, you've got to up your game and understand, again, it's doing what you should be doing to protect your customer and to protect their data and what's going in and out of your network. So, yeah, cybersecurity, I guess, we could go on and on about it, but it is a real thing. I don't like new buzzwords or new terms that come up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, cybersecurity. I'm sorry, cybersecurity has been here since like day one of the internet. That's kind of the way it is.
And I think you hit on a good point there too about that compliance portion too, Jeff. Make sure that if you're going to help somebody with their compliance, that you understand what that compliancy really entails. Just because you put a UTM in doesn't mean you're done. You have to set that UTM up correctly to manage the network and monitor all the traffic that is on the local LAN and leaving the WAN. You can't just monitor portions of it, and you have to keep those logs for a year and all that stuff. And these services and equipment that you have to be able to provide that sort of thing. So it's an ongoing, you have to meet those compliancy things ongoing.
Well, and that's where you invoke like things like the compliancy group, and get them to use their expertise, because they're looking at this stuff all the time. They've been doing it for a long time. They're going to provide you the information you need to do your job better, or you can literally spend hundreds of hours. Now, I remember before I started this podcast, I literally spent 100 hours of watching videos, and I knew a fair bit about podcasting. In 1 month's time, I spent 100 hours just to try to figure out what, the basics of the stuff I needed, so I didn't, come off sounding like I didn't know what I was talking about. And I probably still sounded like that anyways. But what I was trying to do was educate myself to the point where I had a good foundation to at least start with. That's what I was trying to do. Now, I don't have that type of time. So I'm going to hire somebody else that's already taken that time, and I'm going to use their information to make my life easier.
And keep in mind, I would always go back that you are never certifying that somebody is meeting or trying to attain compliance. That is on you can assist them to meet their compliance needs. But, like with HIPAA, guys, we're covering 8 pages, 8 of that law, which is hundreds of pages. So, just because you're doing the IT part, you don't know everything else that needs to happen in order for them to reach compliance. So don't ever tell your customers that, yeah, I got your HIPAA compliance or FINRA compliance or PCI compliance.
Best effort. Okay, so Rick said something in the chat room, and I thought this was comical, so I'm going to say this. He says, I am an expert. An X is a has-been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. A has-been drip under pressure. That's awesome. All right, so let's go at last 2 items before we get to our email is protecting users, antivirus, anti-malware solutions. I think we've kind of touched on that. Any things that you guys are using as far as What's your antivirus and anti-malware solution of choice, John?
I like Bitdefender and I like Kaspersky.
Awesome. Paco?
Yeah, Bitdefender for me.
And I am rocking Windows Defender. Sorry, I know all the naysayers out there. Whatever. I have 0 infections, and I check my computer all the time. So whatever. But yeah.
You know, the other thing I would push clients to do that I try, that it's not a service that I'm trying to provide, but I'm trying to find, I push them to a solution that they can buy themselves. It's just ongoing training of some
That's
sort.
good. Yep. I agree. Definitely need that. All right. Last topic before we get keeping on top of paperwork. Paco, go. You got a smile on your face. Paco, take that one.
Yeah, that's a dream that I have, to be on top of paperwork.
I have a dream.
You know, there's so much damn paperwork that I have, is insane. There's paperwork from the intake forms that I have for people dropping off stuff, or just when I am taking care of some of my client stuff, all the way down to making sure I log every incident that comes in, because they don't want to email the distro that I have for them, slash it emails into the system, but I have to convert it from a lead to a ticket in Synchro, and then put in the right information, billing the right invoice, because they're prepaid clients or monthly, and making sure that I have that, so when it comes to the year review or quarterly review, hey, this is all the stuff we did. Yeah, it's I would like to know how people are doing that, because that is that in the nice realm of things, that's what I would love to do, is to keep on track of my paperwork.
John?
Documentation.
it's the
I have a stack. I have a stack here, and I have a stack over here that I still have to catch up on.
inbox, outbox. Yeah. And it's hard. You got to keep it. In my opinion, you've got to try to do your paperwork as you go. But it is the hardest thing when you're going, especially when you're traveling. And you guys do a lot more than that than I do. Traveling from customer to customer, taking care of all that stuff. Usually I make people come to me and they'll fill out a piece of paper and sign the contract on the back. And I usually take that and I will put it into Repair Shopper, all the information that is pertinent, and make sure I log that computer as I'm working on it, or before I actually start to work on it, and just keep it simple. And these guys, and don't get me wrong, these guys have excellent documentation. With what they're doing with documentation, it's just a lot of information. And what I've noticed is the more data we have, when I'm searching for something on my computer, it is a pain in the butt to find, because there's so much stuff. I have way too much stuff. Now, stuff that I need, I can't get rid of it. But trying to find something, I'm like, where did I put that document? Even though I've got a tree and a nice hierarchy where all this stuff goes, still not that easy to remember. Because again, I got to remember it, right? So if only there was a program for that. Anyways, all right. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we're going to answer an email, and then I think we're almost done. All right. To support this show, go to patreon.com/computer repair podcast. Our newest Patreon supporters are Jerry Plussel, Jeremy Steger, and Gene Gutierrez. And I want to thank those new Patreon supporters for supporting the show. I appreciate it. And I believe all of them have gotten into the Facebook group, the secret Facebook group. And that's what it'll get you for $1 a show, $4 or $5 a month. You'll get into the secret Facebook group. And I just have to say, we have the smartest group of people in that group. I mean, the people listening to the show are smart. You're really smart. The emails are great, and a lot of good information out there. But the information that gets passed back and forth in that group is just in a nice way, not in a, how come you didn't know that, stupid? We don't get that. We get, hey, well, have you thought about doing it this way? Or what about that? Or, maybe sometimes it needs to be clarification, but it's in a nice way. It's not in in a derogatory way or anything like that. And that's what we like. And that's why we kind of charge for that, because it's nice to have that closed, safe group, safe environment you can be in. So we really appreciate all those Patreon supporters that are brand new, and also our continued supporters. We appreciate that. So, yeah, go to patreon.com/computer repair podcast, sign up today. And all you got to do is send me an email. Or actually, all you have to do is really send me a friend request on Facebook. Once you do that, and I will see your name, match it up, and I'll get you in the secret Facebook group right away. All right. Here is our email. Says, "Hi, Jeff. First off, just want to say I love the Computer Repair Podcast with you and everyone on the show." That's mostly everyone else. They're awesome. "I started my business supporting residential, and your show is very informative and helpful to me. I want to start supporting small businesses sometime this year or next. The thing is, with small businesses, I am not comfortable with servers or networking at this time. No experience. But I can work on the individual's PCs in the business with monitoring, maintenance, and break fix. I have an RMM tool that I'm using for residential managed service plans, Synchro MSP. I'm learning a lot about servers and networking, not afraid to learn, but just wanted your thoughts on this. Maybe it's a good discussion on the show. You think it would be a viable business to do just monitoring, maintenance, and break fix for business, or is it knowing servers and networking critical from the start? Thanks, and can't wait for another podcast, Ben." Thank you, Ben, for the email. John, I'm going to kick that one over to you. And is it okay just to have monitoring, maintenance, and break fix services in the beginning?
Boy, I don't know. I think that might be a tough sell. I think you really got to have the networking done too, because I mean that is an essential part in any small business.
Okay. Paco?
Same. I think networking is a big component of that. As far as servers, I'm not too worried about servers because there's not a lot of clients that are having servers anymore. And if they do, those just aren't the clients for you as you're starting up, as you decide whether that's something you want to take on or if that's something that you want to figure out. Now, when I say servers, I mean physical servers. Now, a lot of the services of what servers are using are now going to the cloud. Active Directory as a service, and so and other things like that. So definitely familiarize yourself with other of those services of what the servers have done, or even how to set them up in the cloud. But physical servers, I would say that that's not probably the biggest thing starting out, but definitely the networking piece, because you got to there's always going to be something connected in some way, shape, or form, especially if you're really trying to do monitoring and if you really want to put stuff in there to help make your job easier.
Yeah, I mean, let's just face it. Everything is touching the network now. Phones, alarms, cameras. I mean, you really got to have the networking down. Again, I'll pimp the TechCon again. I mean, if it works out like we're hoping, I mean, there's going to be a great networking portion that is going to discuss a lot of this, everything from the basics to monitoring to some Fluke stuff to VLAN. And so I think that's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. And the thing what's that?
So we're going to have that?
Well, I'm hoping.
We got a meeting in a few hours, boys. So,
Hope, not promising, hoping.
I kid.
Oh, stop it. All right. So as far as the networking, here's where I would start off, and here's what you need to do. You need to obviously you're going to have a network in your own home, I would imagine. I can't imagine not having computers and networking in your own house, even if you're doing this out of an office or somewhere else or whatever. So that's a great place to start. Networking is not as hard as you might think. And really just getting in there and, screwing it up a little bit, kicking the kids offline, that type of stuff will teach you how to do that stuff. One of the things that I know zero zip about VoIP, voice over IP. Guess what? Signed up with Freedom Voice because they've got a package where I can try their phone out and use my number for my business line. And this is the first time ever, not ever, since 1999, I will have a physical phone in my house. That was a long time. Dude, that was Oh my God, that was like 20 years ago. Oh, I'm old. Holy crap. Anyways, so I'm going to have this phone that I've got to configure for my network with the switches, routers, etc., everything I have here. So that's going to be a learning curve for me. But it's something I'm going to do here so that I can pass it on to the customers that I believe are going to start needing this service instead of buying something off Amazon and trying to support it themselves. Because it just doesn't make sense. There's problems or whatever. And plus, even if I go somewhere and I need to figure out the problems with their system, at least I'll have a basic understanding of how my system works so that I can help clients out that way. So again, just do it in your own house. Eat your own dog food. Do what you're going to do for a client. You can get used equipment. You can get not for resale equipment through places like Snap AV. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money and just start off simple. Most of the time, if you have internet in your house, you're using their router and Wi-Fi. Well, get rid of that if you can. Go spend $100 on a modem and figure out what you need to do to get that hooked up to the system. It's an easy, quick way to learn. And again, this is my personal opinion. I don't think it's that hard. John, would you agree with that?
Basics in networking are not hard. No.
Now you get into some other things where you've got to start doing VLANs and all that kind of stuff. That's a whole different criteria. But for the most part, what you're talking about, basic networking, is going to be in a lot of your small micro offices anyways. Be pretty simple. So. All right. I'll tell you what, that was we got through all of them. We'll keep one for in the books, and then we've got some new ones that are being talked about in the Computer Repair Podcast secret Facebook group. And we'll start bringing some other people on to talk about
these different
things. Is it really
a secret since we talk about it all the time?
John, I could tell you, then I'd have to kill you.
Tomorrow is Monday, so I'm debating.
True. Okay. All right, John, go ahead and let people know where they can find you at in your lovely.
No, just keep the questions coming, guys. We'll talk to you in the CRP group. But this is the kind of show where we kind of do the jabberjaw, as like Paco would say, jabberjaws. That I really enjoy because we get to touch on a lot of topics and, spew out that we stayed at a Holiday Inn last night and sound really smart. But, you guys bringing the topics really spurs the discussion and, really pulls out the information. So thanks to everybody.
Amen to that. Paco, where can people find you and all the wonderful things that you do on the interwebs?
Yep. You can find me on Tech Life. It's supposed to come out every other Tuesday, or actually every Tuesday, but yeah, I gotta get that taken care of.
Oh, excuse me.
I'll be working on that to get it a little bit more in sync. You can catch me every other Thursday. I believe there should be a show this week with Matthew Rodella over at the Computer Business Marketing Show. And yeah, you can find me on either one of those two shows or over at the TechCon. That'll be September 20th to 22nd.
Paco, we talked about this before. We don't talk about that other show that you're on because, oh wait, Matthew Rodella, he's a sponsor of TechCon, so he's all good. Good people.
And Tech Site Builder. You want to go sign up?
That's right. Yes. If you, and I will say this again, and I've said this a couple times, and I know there's been some people asking questions about, websites and stuff. Go to Tech Site Builder.
I will say this. Talking with Matt, there are some really cool things that are going to be coming for Tech Site Builder. So I would jump on when you get the chance, if you can do it sooner rather than later, because there's going to be some cool stuff coming here that he's going to be releasing. So it's going to be exciting when he has that out.
And I would go back. This, also hits a topic on one of the questions that we covered about, starting up. What do you need to get? You probably need a web presence. You need some domain email with your domain on it. And TechSite Builder is a great way to get started at a very low cost. And even, I say get started. That's not the only place. That's the place to park it forever.
That's right. I agree 100%. Yeah, so go over to techsitebuilder.com and get started today. And he doesn't even sponsor the show. We just give that information out because we like Matthew and he does good work. Or if you notice, we only talk about things that we actually believe in and believe that it's worth their weight in gold, and that's the type of community we are, because we want to help others.
Yep, community invested vendors.
Hey, we like to sponsorships. Don't get us wrong, but if it works, it works.
Absolutely. All right, come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnuts.com/CRP Live. Join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room, where we have plenty of people making funny little quips and all kinds of good chatter. You can send an email to podnuts@podnuts.com, and we will actually read it on the show and answer your question live. Or you can leave a voicemail at 734-335-1000. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on the Computer Repair Podcast.